listen to my dad. He's a beast. And if you don't want to listen to him, okay, you don't want to get successful. If you ain't trying to dominate, man, then go listen to something else.
Welcome, athletes, top performers, and all those looking to gain that killer instinct, that edge you need to dominate in any environment. This is the Sports Motivation Podcast, and I'm your host, Niyi Sobo. I played ball and succeeded at the highest levels, and I'm now committed to showing you how you can accomplish the ambitious goals and visions that you have. This podcast is designed to teach you high-level strategy, not just fluff and hype. This will cut to the core if you let it. And by taking action on the practical and next level advice I share, you will see results. Expect that. Expect to be more confident. Expect to be more focused. Expect to be more decisive. And expect to be more fearless. Expect to become the leader your vision needs you to become. So listen up. Take notes. Let's get to it. Welcome to the Sports Motivation Podcast. It's your host, Niyi Sobo. You got to set goals. I don't care what you call them, intentions, outcomes, results. If you are trying to accomplish anything, you're trying to be something, you must be definitive and decisive about what that is. So that means you're going to have to set a goal. Now, maybe you don't call it set a goal, but you must have defined what it is that you want, right? But the reality is that, I'm just going to be honest, it's not as easy as it sounds. And setting goals, the process of setting goals, the art of setting goals, the science of setting goals is not as simple as one may make it sound sometimes. I can tell you, okay, write down what you want, write out some things that you got to do, and go do it, right? And that's the way you set goals. Again, oversimplification. I would warn against listening to people who too often oversimplify things. We want to make it as easy as it can be, but not more simple. That's actually an Albert Einstein quote. I butchered it, but that's the main idea. Albert Einstein says, you don't want to make things too complex, but not more simple than they need to be. So the reality is that the art of setting goals can be complex, but it can be learned. And I want to share with you some very powerful tips. I'm going to be breaking down how I set goals. I'm going to give you some examples. I'm going to give you some very common mistakes that people make when setting goals. And so I want you to treat this almost like I'm coaching you through when you're sitting down to set your goals. And hopefully you walk away with a lot of clarity about how to more accurately assess what it is that you want, and sort of give you some mindset shifts about how to look at goals. All right. I think that's the biggest thing, is for you to walk away with a breakthrough in terms of how you look at it, because how you look at it determines what you do. It doesn't matter what system you use, but if you look at it in a certain way, I promise you that you're going to have a lot of breakthroughs, no matter what system, whether it's mine, whether it's something you read in another book, whether or not you have your own goal system. But if you can just correct or modify your approach or your mindset towards it, big shifts will happen as a result. All right. So really quick, let's just first start with, what is a goal? All right. The word goal brings up different feelings for different people. Some people are averse to that word. They don't like it. You'll hear people say, burn your goals. You'll hear people say, don't set goals. You'll hear people say, don't get attached to your goals, whatever. At the end of the day, a goal is a desire. It's something you want. Okay. So a goal is not a number. I'm going to say that again. It's not a number or a thing. What we want is always a feeling. All right. How many times have you seen people say they have the goal of earning money, but when they get it, they don't feel the way they thought they would feel? So then the goal is virtually useless. The goal is not the object. It's the feeling. Like, for example, the goal is not for Michael Jordan to win a ring, okay? He can go buy 100 rings. The goal is the feeling. And what's the feeling? To win the championship. It's not to win any championship. It's to win the NBA championship. And with winning the NBA championship comes a certain feeling, a feeling of being important, a feeling of significance, a feeling of accomplishment. That's what we want. We didn't want the numbers or the stats. We want the feeling. So those who say they want numbers and stats, So for those of you who set goals and it's all about numbers, and I'm not saying you can't do those, or I'm going to talk about the importance of both. I'm not saying you can't set out to lead the league in scoring, but I would ask you, for what? What are you really after here? All right. What's the feeling you're going after? This is critical because most people get caught up with this whole idea of SMART formula, like the SMART goals. And that does not help. And I'll tell you why, because people don't understand how to use that. By the way, the SMART formula is like, specific, measurable, actionable, reasonable, time sensitive. There's value in that, and I'm going to explain that. But the way people use this, and I was guilty of this. I would be like, man, like I got to set SMART goals. So I would have something that I want, which is to increase the quality of a relationship with someone that I love. But how do I put that in specific, measurable? How do I increase that? Do I measure that with like a caliper, a love caliper? Right? I can't do that. And so I would be confused. And I would do what most people do, and I'm going to talk about it a little later, which is, make the goals of one date night a week. And again, there's value in that. I'm going to talk about it. But this whole SMART thing, I want to clear that up, all right? It takes the emotion out of it. A goal is not something, a goal is something that you want. It's not something necessarily, all right? Remember, everything we do is for a reason, and that reason is usually a feeling. Not usually, it's always a feeling. And we decide on the feeling based on what things mean. So for some of us, we think we'll feel important once we make a certain amount of money. We'll feel secure once we make a certain amount of money. We'll feel important once we win a championship. And there's no right or wrong to that, by the way. I hope you don't think, I hope I don't sound like I'm trying to judge that. I just want to make you aware of that because this is going to give you a lot of clarity about how to set goals. There's no right or wrong way to set goals, but there are effective and ineffective. And it becomes ineffective when you don't understand the emotion behind it, all right? So a goal could be something in the form of like, of an improvement. It could be a result in the form of an improvement. Could be a stat. It could be something that's easy to measure. It could be something that's not so easy to measure. So it could be money, just as long as you're clear on why. It could be improve the quality, right? It could be quantitative. It could be qualitative. There's no right or wrong. I believe there should be a balance of the two type of goals. But you just got to know that. I just really wanted to point that out, all right? So let me show you sort of like how I approach setting goals. Okay, this is sort of my approach. Number one, I focus on what I want. I don't set goals based on what other people think I should do or what I should have. I don't set out to say, I want the Sports Motivation Podcast to have, this many million downloads because it will look cool to, this many people. I don't do that. I have tangible number goals that I go after for my own reasons. And some of those reasons might have to do with other people. But I don't set goals just because other people want me to or that I think I have to, if that makes sense. I used to do that. I don't do that anymore. It's a waste of time. Because if you do it for other people, you're just not going to do what's necessary. Again, I hope I don't sound like I'm judging. It's actually a practical issue. If you do something for someone else, just for them, you might not follow through. But if you do things for your own reasons because of how it make you feel, and you've identified the purpose of it, a lot more effective. So that's first. I focus on what I want. I focus on what's best for me, my vision. And I hope that doesn't sound selfish, like I don't think about other people, because other people are a part of my vision. But I don't listen to any one person's opinion or a group of people that has nothing to do with what I'm trying to do to determine my goals. All right. The next thing is I start with my vision. So I start with my vision, the big picture. Big picture. I don't just go setting a bunch of random goals. I start with the vision first. Then I have yearly goals. I take my vision and I break it down to yearly goals. I don't do too much. I have a rough idea about where I want to be 5 years, 10 years, etc. I try not to put too much restraint on the time period. That's why I start with my vision of who I want to be ultimately. And then I set yearly goals and outcomes. I break those goals down in their parts to a quarter. Okay. So I have the yearly goal and I have a quarterly goal. Then from there, I break it down into monthly goals. Then from there, weekly goals, and I have daily goals. So everything that I do on a daily basis, for the most part, is a part of my vision. Does that make sense? So for some of you who have had a hard time setting or following through with goals, it's probably because you don't have a vision. and they haven't been properly chunked down from their bigger parts. It's kind of hard to just say, like, I'm going to do this when it's not a part of a bigger picture, or a bigger scheme, or a bigger plan. All right. So no matter what the goal is, there's always going to be an end result. All right. So that's where you start. This part is critical. So for each end result, so Stephen Covey in his book, 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, I think it was the first or second one, always begin with the end in mind. So the result is not always going to be something that's like a SMART goal, quote unquote. But for the end result, there will and should always be a very specific plan to accomplish it. That's where SMART goals fit in with the process. All right, so let me give you an example. Let's say your goal is to improve a relationship, let's say, all right? And doesn't that sound vague? However, that is a very real goal. And I like to do what I call evidence procedure, which is say, how will I know once I've improved my relationship? So how will I know once I've accomplished my goal? But you can start off with a general goal in that sense, saying you want to improve the quality of something, or you want to dramatically improve something. But where the SMART goals fit in is your process. So how are you going to approach improving? Are you going to daily read? Evaluate at night? Are you going to, we're talking about the relationship. Are you going to daily check in with your wife? Let's say it's with your wife. Are you going to go on an adventure once a month to X spot? Are you going to evaluate her and ask her questions once a week? Are you going to have movie nights on Friday, etc.? You see, these are where the things get smart and measurable. But to start off with saying like your goal is just to go on a date once a week, that's not a good idea, man. There's not a lot of emotion behind that. And that to me sounds like a process goal that fits into an end result. I like to start off with the end result. And in my experience, those who are highly successful do the same thing. They start off with the end result. They don't just start off with some random, goals with numbers attached to them, all right? So we talk about GPS, the 3-step process I use to set goals. It's what's the goal, the outcome, what's the purpose behind it, and then what's the strategy, all right? But I always start with the end first, which is the goal. So a good way to know what the goal is to just ask yourself, what do I want to be true by, the end of the year? What do I want to be true? What do I want my reality to be? And the way you describe that reality is the goal. That's the goal. Okay, now it doesn't have to sound sexy it should sound appealing. It should sound like something you want, but I wouldn't worry too much about how it's worded or if it's tangible enough. As long as it feels tangible to you, as long as the end result paints a clear picture to you, there's a picture that should go in your mind when you say your goal. So to improve a relationship with someone, that should produce a feeling when you talk about it. That's the goal, all right? So then I identify why, which is the purpose. Then I create a strategy. And my strategy always includes measurables and trackables. I have charts. I have schedules. I have plans. I have clear action plans for what it is that I want to do. And this is done so that I can make sure that what I do has tangible effects on my end result. So if you want to increase your jump shot or improve your jump shot, then you've got to have in your process measurable and trackables so that you can see if what you're doing has an effect on your jump shot. It's like a scientist, how he conducts an experiment. Like, what do you think will happen when you take X amount of jump shots per day? But the goal is not just to shoot 1,000 shots a day. That might be your process goal in order to achieve a certain result. But remember, you got to start with the end in mind. So for me, then I take the action. I evaluate frequently. So I do my process. I do it, and then I evaluate. I compare. So if your goal is to go on date night once a week with your wife, then evaluate, is date nights working? Or are you guys annoyed with each other the whole time? Still not making love consistently with passion. Still not getting the results you want. And many people fall in that trap. They just take the action. They just blindly go, call, I'm gonna text my mom, I'm gonna text my family members, I love them every day. Well, that's not really getting you the result. Because your dad don't really read his text messages, and he doesn't care about text messages. He likes when you call. He likes when you visit. Anybody's ever read the book 5 Love Languages? Not everybody receives love in the same way. So this is a great example. And it's so funny. I use the date night example a lot, or on this episode, as I'm talking, I've been talking about the date night thing. And I use that because that's what I did. All right. So what I did when I was trying to, really improve the quality of my relationship, as I always am, I'm trying to improve my relationship all the time. And I said, all right, I'm going to go on date night once a week with my wife, right? And we do that. We go on date night once a week because that's what I heard you should do. Everyone said that's what you should do. Got to take time for your wife. It made sense, and it's true, right? So what was I doing? I was going on date night with my wife once a week. But I didn't start with the end in mind. So what I was doing is we was going to dinner and a movie, and I thought we were having a great time because I like dinner and movies. I love dinner and movies. It's like I love going to the movies. Love going to the movies. I can go every single week. When I was in New Orleans playing for the Saints, I had a lot of free time. And especially in the off season, especially when my kids weren't there, before my kids moved up there with me. I had a lot of free time. I would go to the movies, man, like 3 times a week during the day by myself sometimes. 12 in the afternoon, watching movies, or whatever new movie came out. I love the movies. So it was a good time to me, right? But for my wife, she's not too crazy about movies. And so what we found is that the date nights weren't really that effective. They weren't accomplishing the end result. So what I've had to do now is be more creative in my approach, have a list of different things that we can do, step outside of my comfort zone, because I'm a guy who can be locked into routine. I can be rigid if not careful. But my wife, she likes a lot of adventure, spontaneity, all right? So I bring that up because it's important for you to know the end game first, have some measurables and trackables. So for me, with my wife, it would be like, okay, create a list, and I've done this, right? Create a list in my notepad where I have a bunch of different things that we can do, and every week I pick something out. For example, on Thursday, on my target practice, which is my habit checklist for each day, I have specific habits that I do each day. Some I do daily, some I do only on Wednesdays, Thursday, etc. On Thursday, it's my job to schedule the date. That's a trackable, that's a measurable. Now, it can be a different type of date, but I must schedule it. That's the other thing, by the way. I wasn't scheduling the dates, and my wife wants me to do that. She doesn't want to schedule them. So wasn't really accomplishing the results. I was telling her to figure it out, schedule it, just as long as I do it, but I wasn't getting the result, all right? For me, there's no loss for me, all right? So I'm always flexible to get what I want. That's how I approach it. So I'll very quickly abandon a strategy. And this wasn't always the case, and I experienced a lot of resistance in this way a lot. This is something I've learned, and quite honestly, I've just learned through the amount of books that I've read and how many people I've been exposed to. Those who are highly successful understand you can't be married to the process too much. You must be willing to divorce the process. I don't mean stop the process. I just mean adopt a new strategy, a new approach in order to get what you want. The end results is where I'm always going, all right? So now I want to break down some common mistakes. Now, I've talked a little bit about some already, but I want to show you just how in many ways you might be approaching this in the wrong way or having in the past where your focus has been solely on accomplishing getting the money, right? Like, let's say you want to make $2 million this year. If that's all you're focused on, you're going to miss out on a lot of things because you don't know what your end game is. Now, I'm not saying to make $2 million but here's the trick. If $2 million is your goal and you judge your success or not based on whether or not you got the $2 million or not, then you're going to severely limit yourself. But in that case, you want to focus on the process of what it takes in order to accomplish the $2 million. And if you don't get the $2 million in the year, that's all right if you have put in the right steps into the process. So process is extremely critical, all right? So it's kind of like this balance. And like I said, I like to have a balance between quantitative and qualitative goals. But you don't want to be too rigid. I meet some people when they have all quantitative goals, like X amount of dollars, X amount of times, X amount of metrics, X amount of this. It's not very, very effective. There's not a lot of emotion behind that. Must have a mix, all right? So, like I said, going out to eat with your wife. I'm gonna give some examples, some mistakes that people make when setting goals. Going out to eat with your wife once a week. That's a process goal. That should be a part of the strategy to get an end result. All right. Remember, I said process is part of your strategy, right? So, I would ask that person, what's the end result? So, it's to improve the intimacy in your relationship. That's a good end goal. So, go with that. Identify the purpose, and then create a strategy that should include some measurables and trackables. Let's see. Let's say your goal is to shoot 100 shots per day. All right. So you're a basketball player, you want to shoot 100 shots per day. That's a good daily goal, but that should be a part of an end result, which is to, increase your ability to, shoot off the dribble. Let's say that's the thing that you want, is the ability to be able to shoot off the dribble. So that's the goal, to improve that. Your process or your strategy is to shoot 100 shots per day. But if you just go to the gym and just blindly shoot 100 shots a day and just check off the box, what if that doesn't improve your ability to shoot off the dribble? Then you just wasted a bunch of time. Your job is to get the result. Relentless, in the book, what's his name? Tim Grover. He talks about closers or cleaners, right? Cleaners, they crave the end result. It's a fact, man. Don't listen to people who tell you don't focus on the result. Now, you shouldn't only focus on the result. Some points, you got to define and establish the result, want it so badly that you're willing to do anything that you need to do in order to get it, and put all your focus on the process and strategy. But if you just go in there blindly shooting 100 shots, well, yep, I did my 100 shots. I did what I need to do. I journaled today. I guess I'm good. No, what's the result? I did the morning mastery episode. What I talked about, I was doing that in terms of my morning routine. I was just sitting there doing my morning routine, right? Checking off the boxes, but it wasn't giving me the result that I wanted, which was a feeling. I wanted to feel confident about my day. I wanted to feel a sense of certainty about my ability to succeed that day. And sometimes at the end of my routine, I didn't get that result. So sometimes I need to switch it up. I've since learned. So sometimes I'll go on a walk in the morning. I got a little trampoline, jump in my trampoline. I got a set of weights right next to my computer. Whatever I got to do. Sometimes I do a little 15-minute HIIT workout in the morning. Sometimes I'll meditate a little longer. Sometimes I'll read a lot. Sometimes I won't read as much. I'm not as rigid. I'm flexible. Like Bruce Lee says, be like water. All right? It's critical. So make sure you know the process to get your end result. All right? This is critical. Make sure that you know the process to get your end result. So when you identify your end result, maybe it's shooting off the dribble, like you want to develop the ability to shoot off the dribble, or you want to be more explosive off the line. Let's say you're a defensive lineman, or you want to increase your stamina. You're an endurance. You're a long distance runner. Study other people. Study their process. Do not make up your own process. This is critical. You will avoid so much frustration. You will shave so much time. You will save so much energy. You will avoid so much unnecessary pain if you would only study others' process. Study the process of other people who have the result that you want. It sounds simple. It sounds practical, but you'd be surprised at how often we don't do it. I'm not going to say you don't do it. I fall into this same bucket. If you, like, for example, I got a 2-year-old. We're potty training my son. We decided to potty train my son. Me and my wife are both going to be involved. I work from home. I'm here, right? And so it's like, we got to know. And it's like, we just started potty training. It was like, why don't we figure out how to do it? Like, I don't really remember like any process. With my other 2 sons, their mom was mostly responsible for that. I don't have no set process. So why don't we go figure that out? Why not? Why should we make up our own process and give ourselves headaches? So ask yourself, what results have you been trying to accomplish? And how aggressively have you been seeking answers from masters? That's why you're listening to this podcast, right? Hopefully you're reading books. That's why I read. It's like, if you want to know how to accomplish something in a fast amount of time, you go look. It always trips me out when people, have something that they don't know how to cook and they want to do it on their own first. That makes no sense to me. It's like, follow the recipe first. Then you can put your own flair once you have a general idea about how to make something. But why should you try to go about it on your own first? You're not going to get it right. You're not. Follow the recipe. The next mistake that a lot of people make, I just want to make sure you don't over-evaluate, all right? Commit to your process. So for me, I evaluate myself daily, but I don't evaluate necessarily my overall scheme daily. I evaluate myself and notice what I did, what I didn't do. I tend to evaluate my plans on a weekly basis because a lot of times the plans can change, but you don't want to be the person who's changing your plans too much, if that makes sense. So I like to evaluate on a weekly basis. I would suggest that, honestly, if I were you, evaluate yourself, but don't over-evaluate yourself. Don't go switching your plans up every day. At some point, you got to commit to the process. You got to actually do it. Like if you start, for example, if you start a routine to build muscle and you stop after 1 month because you're not seeing results, you could possibly be sabotaging your success because results could be well on their way. You just got to give it some time. So commit to your process. And lastly, make sure your process is clearly mapped out. You must have it mapped out. It's got to be laid out for you. It can't be in your head. It must be on paper where you can see it virtually, like you could see it physically or virtually. I like to write my plans out on paper. So I have what I call my master blueprint. All my clients have this. They have their life mapped out in detail, in writing, and typed as well, combination. But it should be mapped out. Your process should be mapped out, all right? So I wanted to do this episode because, again, I see a ton of people who struggle a lot with setting goals. So it was my hope in creating this that I help you establish or gain some more clarity in how to go about the process of setting goals for yourself and avoiding some of the common mistakes that come along. So hopefully the biggest thing you take from this is that you focus on the end result and focus on the feeling behind it and create a detailed and thorough process by which to accomplish the end result and evaluate frequently. But don't be the person who blindly goes doing things this many times per week, this many times per day, and forgetting the big picture, all right? You got to be flexible. You got to be nimble. It's like a running back. I was a running back. We have a designated hole that we're supposed to run through. But guess what? Sometimes the hole opens up on the backside. But if I just press that hole and ignore that backside, I might miss out on a big play. But here's the other kicker. If I cut back too fast without first pressing the hole, I can lose yardage. So there's wisdom and intuition involved. But ultimately, I believe you need to start with pushing forward, press that hole, but be nimble and flexible and keep your eyes open, all right? Now, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to fail a lot. I would be curious to see what my completion rate is or my accomplishment rate is on my goals. I don't set goals for the same reason other people do, though. I don't set goals just so I can say, yeah, I set this goal and I did it. Yeah. Dun, 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 dun. I'm successful. I don't do that. I don't do that. I set goals to make me become better. I set goals so that I can become more, so that I can develop more mental stamina, toughness, so that I can accomplish more at a consistent level. That's why I set goals. Now, don't get it twisted. I like accomplishing just as much as the next man. I love the feeling of knocking down a goal, and I knock down a lot of my goals, but a lot of them I don't. But I guess what? I know this. I always get better. I'm always moving. I'm always improving. I'm always expanding. I'm always evolving, even when it feels like I'm not. Even when I'm in a quote unquote plateau, even when I quote unquote don't see the results, I know I'm getting better. When does muscle grow? When you're asleep. That represents a quote unquote plateau. So even when you're asleep, even when your results are asleep, what if muscle's building at that time? What if that's the time wisdom is accumulating? Be patient, be still, but keep moving. Be like water, be nimble, be flexible, and you'll get it. I promise you. All right. So next time you go to set up your goals for the quarter, if you're not working with me directly, I suggest you go back and listen to this episode. I laid out a lot of gems, a lot of jewels that you should make sure you don't repeat a lot of mistakes that I've made in the past. Learn. Mistakes are inevitable, but you don't have to make as many mistakes as you have made in the past, right? As long as you learn and keep growing, all right? Look, Hope this helped. I'm going to talk soon, all right? Peace. Thank you for tuning in to the Sports Motivation Podcast. Make sure if you dig in the podcast, go and subscribe so you can always get the latest episodes. I come out with a new episode twice a week on Tuesday and Friday at 3 a.m. Eastern. And make sure you go ahead and rate it and leave me a good review. As always, I appreciate you tuning in, and I'll talk to you soon. Much love. One of the most common questions I get from athletes all the time is this: what is the single best thing I can do to reach my goals? How can I set myself apart from everybody else? Obviously, there are a lot of things, but the one thing that's helped set me apart was having a coach, a mentor, someone to show me the right strategies and how I need to do things specifically to achieve my results. So you could try to do it on your own, but you'll end up making many mistakes that could have been avoided if you had someone guiding you and coaching you along the way. 99% of athletes in the world have expert coaches to show them the things that they can't see. If you want to work with me as your coach, I want you to go to IMNOTYOU.com/SRC and learn more and sign up for a free coaching session. I'll give you 60 minutes of my time for free, and I can teach you some dynamic strategies, plus show you how you can secure me as your sports results coach. All I ask is that you fit in this criteria. You're serious about your sport, you're willing to invest the time and money, and you have clear goals of taking your game to the next level, or some sort of specific results you want to achieve. This is definitely not for everyone, and I have very limited spots available for this. So, if this applies to you, I want you to take action. Go to IMNOTYOU.com/SRC, and I guarantee you're going to take your game and your career to the next level.